Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. This time we'll be talking about the 4 new refines we've got, as well as 40 something other unit placement change since I've added the tier A- as well to this tier list. Basically the same as the GHB Tempestral tier list update, but there is also a whole lot more unit on the refined tier list than there are on the GHB Tempestral tier list one. I would also like to address the fact that I've not worked on Traven's video yet. That's because we ended up getting Itsuki's stats like 4 days before he's getting released. So instead of doing a separate video for Traven and Itsuki, I'll just merge the two together. I don't typically do this, but due to lack of time, it's just better for me to work it this way. I'll work on the banner review first though, because that's the most important one, and also because today, Saturday, is my only day off. Sunday I have a stream, and Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is machining again. Yep. I'm struggling with time, but this is the best I can do. It's literally 5 AM right now to give you an idea, and I'm working on this. I just don't really have a whole lot of time to myself nowadays. Anyway, I think I'm going to be doing this a bit different than how I did the Tempestral GHB tier list update. I'm going to be talking about the refine first, and then I'll rapid fire all of the change to the tier list because there's quite a bit. So, yeah. Do bear with me though, this video is probably going to be over an hour, if not 2, so if you want to watch this in one setting, just get comfortable because this is going to be a long one. So, alright. So, let's just start with Rebecca. As per usual, I go from worst to best. Surprising no one. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to say if I put Rebecca at the lowest, but Jay, 4 across the board for a very easy condition on top of cooldown -1 is super good. Why is it so low? The reason is really simple. Norn exists. The bow is really good. It's just attached to a bad unit. To put it in perspective, if you're taking Rebecca here, and you try to make her a tank with this bow, you're better off using Norn with a slaying bow, because Norn literally has, I believe, 18 more BST, or 19 more BST. You know, the fact that this weapon gives her 4 across the board, 16 BST, then you realize that Norn can actually refine her weapon and get, like, I believe it's 2 HP with either 1 attack, 2 speed, 3 def, or 3 res. Yeah, the stats are not even that far off. In fact, if you're just looking in terms of bulk, I believe Rebecca ends up with 25-31 unmerged, whereas Norn has 31 def and 27 res. But the thing is, Norn can actually refine her bow to res, and then you have 31-30 versus 25-31. Which is just kind of worse than what Norn has. She does end up with 38 speed, which, I mean, that's cool. Norn is at 36, which is still quite respectable and easy to work with. So, eh. And Norn also ends up with, I believe, 7 more health once you consider the refined weapon, which is, again, what the hell. The one thing Rebecca has going for her is attack, and the fact that she has good bulk to go with the attack. However, if you're considering that for the unit, you're kind of just stuck in going in one specific way as an attacker. And if you don't, and you can't even use AoEs, by the way, because the 4 across the board is not considered in AoEs. Not exactly a great move, but, I mean, that's kind of what you have to work with. This weapon is really good, though. To put it in perspective, and if this was to replace Base Leif's weapon? Base Leif would actually have a better weapon than what he has right now. The way Leif's weapons work right now is just so inconsistent, it does not even matter. But yeah, the thing is, Leif actually has a strong base to go with the weapon that makes the weapon sort of work. Do keep in mind, Rebecca, Leif, and Henry are all three in A+. That's because they really don't have that much worse or better than the other. Like for example, Leif has a pretty neat slaying edge, I guess. It's a slightly better slaying edge, basically. That's the best way I can put it. But it's not much when you're in the world of sword infantries. Rebecca is a really good weapon, but her base stat does not really work with it. Henry is probably the best of the three, but it requires you high investment to really make those set works. Anyway, as far as builds are concerned for Rebecca, this is what I came up with. As I said, you have to go aggressive. If you don't, just abuse the fact you have a whole lot of attack, you're just not going to make it. So if you're considering, of course, the power of buffs with the weapon, right here you have 69 attack on initiation with low attack def in mind. 69 attack with 48 speed. That's pretty solid. As far as your bulk is concerned, you're also at 45 def. Actually, no. 48 def. And 44 res. Which is not bad. Another thing is because of cooldown -1, you can just get hit, and proc Ignis. If you feel like that's going to be inconsistent, you can also downsize to Bonfire. That's also fine. At the end of the day, you're still going to get 22 damage from Bonfire. Which is, again, the reason you would want to build her in the first place. You want to have a good amount of attack, but also enough bulk to be able to take hits when it matters. Rebecca is decent. She's far from a must refine, but she actually got a refine that's fairly helpful. But yeah, it's also very straightforward. There's not much to go with it. If you go for a close counter set, just don't bother and run Dorn instead. That's kind of just what it runs. That's just kind of what it ends up being. Because Rebecca is going to be stuck with cooldown -1, which is a really good effect, mind you. But in some cases, you kind of just want the extra damage from short bow, for example, and Norn can actually run this without losing 16 points of stats. Now, for a character that I was waiting a refine for and have been asking for one every month, and then get welcome to this, I'm not happy. This was such an easy refine to fix. There were so many ways to make the refine work. In case you don't realize, the reason why it's, the effect is if you have 5 more def, or rather, if you're fighting someone with 5 more def than the res, you get 7 damage, which is the archaic effect that is meant to attempt to, simulate adaptive damage. How about just putting adaptive damage? It's not even broken at this point. Felicia did not become the most broken character ever because of it. She became mildly decent. Hell, at this point, adaptive damage on a red sword unit is not even that good. It's okay. It's not amazing, it's just okay, basically. I don't understand their fixation in just not putting adaptive damage on anything. Is it because they think Dragon needs to be unique? Or some dumbass reason? If so, please no. Dragons have plenty to their names, if not Like, just the fact they have really good pref. This is stupid. Leif is a lord, and let me put it this way. Marv got a really good supportive weapon. Alm got like a broken weapon. Selif shafted. Leif shafted. Sigurd probably will be shafted. It's like they despise Jugrol. I hate this. And it's funny too, right? They only, and I mean really, like, they only pay attention to what's canon when it fucks up a character. Oh, look at me, I'm Travent. I have the lance Gungnir. I'm literally referenced to even wielded by like everyone that gets hatted alongside me. But I have a Silver Lance Plus because I gave away my Gungnir to Aryan before the events of Gen 2. Better take that version of Travent and not the younger version that, you know, actually uses the lance, or just say, ah, screw it, let's give him Gungnir and then give Heavenly Gungnir to Aryan. Oh, but how about, you know, Selif with Turfing buffing his speed and res and did not buff any attack or def whatsoever. Strength and def did not get touched by Turfing at all. Give him attack def bond, I guess. What? Like, Selif was begging for speed and res. If his weapon gave something like a conditional 7 speed and res, for example, like just a brazen to go with the weapon, it would have been amazing. But no, they decided to just buff stat that had nothing to do with the weapon, because it can't be canon when it actually helps the character. Just like here. The way Lightbrand was typically used in Thracia was you would basically melee a unit if hitting it in physical would kill it, or mage it if that was, you know, an armored unit you were dealing with, so, you know, hitting with the stat would be ideal. Adaptive damage was a no-brainer, but they decided to just be like, oh, 7 more damage and 5 more depth and res. Like, there's so many ways to make that effect work. If you really want to go with this, how about just make the... if foe's def is over foe's res, period, not with the +5. How about you just do that? Like, make it easier to proc, so then it's actually helpful more often than not. Because the way it is right now, a lot of tanks tend to be mixed tanks, or have a bit more res than defense, looking at Sophis, for example. So this effect is not great. It was already not great when it was released. To put it simply, when it was released, Leif was already horrible. It was outdated the second it was released. It was already worse than units such as Crom, who had access to the Bond Falchion. It's like, what the heck are you doing? And now they get to refine him, and it's like a really easy to refine to do. Just give him adaptive damage, and the refine, instead of giving speed and def, the 2 stat he needs the least, give him 4 attack and res. Done. That's it. Cooldown -1, attack res +4, and just adaptive damage. You're good. Or reduce the restriction on the weapon. Make it if the enemy has more def than res. Period. But no, they just decided to just slap 3 effect haphazardly and just hope it works. I have a +5 Leif. I was planning on +10ing him if his refine was good. I'm not going to, because his refine is not good. I love how Leif got a refine, okay? And is a lord, right? Yet a character that came out the fucking banner after Leif, Carla, is better. and her weapon unrefined is better than his weapon refined. By the way, they're both 5-star exclusives. Wow. That is just... What are you doing? Why? Anyway, enough of me ranting. As far as builds are concerned, there's a few options you can run with. So, this is typically a lot better with Brave Lucina support. That's actually a team in general with Leif. Leif can be actually fairly solid if you have Brave Lucina support. This set here does not really need Brave Lucina unless you can actually still use this and like just run Wrath with Ignis, instant proc Ignis, or Time Pulse with Special Spiral and well, not Time Pulse with Special Spiral, but you can use like Special Spiral, Brave Lucina with Aether and just constantly heal him back. The thing is, anyone with cooldown -1 can do this. And in this case, you don't really want to heal him. So, there's that. At the very least, one thing that ended up being good with Leif is the fact that he just has the Iris stat line. In case you don't know what that is, because I don't really use that term too often anymore, because they actually kind of stopped using that stat line, outside of Larsa, which, I mean, at least in her case it's fitting. She's, you know, Iris' daughter, so having a similar stat line than her mother makes sense. But the Iris stat line is just typically around 33 attack, 37 speed, 30 or a bit more than 30 defense, and then like 21 to 24 res. It's typically 40, 43 HP also. You'll realize a lot of units have that stat line. In fact, I think I can count at least 10. Veloria is one, Nyla is one, Astrum is one, but that one's a Gen 4, so he has a lot more defense. Larsa is another one. Like, there's plenty of them. Marita is also one. No surprise, I believe she's a cousin of Ira at that point, or something similar to that. So, you know, there's plenty of units that have a similar stat line. No surprise. But it's pretty helpful because it's typically in this weird range where the def and res deficit is like around 7. So using Brazen Attack Res is extremely effective. And as you can see here, you end up with 43 def and res. The weapon pushes that to 47 def and 43 res, but that's, you know, it's pretty solid. You become pretty bulky, and this stat line in general is one of the best stat line for Brazen sets. It's one of the reasons why Ira was so good, and really only got truly power crept because of Larsa, which makes me hope she gets a refine now, and not a trash one like Leif got. But considering how the absolute contempt Aya seems to have with FE4 and FE5, I have no hopes. I literally just don't even like have low hope. I just don't have any anymore. Let me just put it in an easy way to understand. FE5 does not have a single good refine. FE4 has Dirtry as a good refine, and that's it. No one else is really good. The only reason Julia has a good refine is because it's Dirtry's refine. If only one unit got a good refine in all of these? I don't know, man. I don't like that at all. So yeah, the smart way would be to just give Larsa's edge to her, because at the end of the day they're both 5-star exclusives, and she would always be able to use it just worse than her daughter anyway. But whatever. Or something similar to what her daughter got, maybe without the bonus stats deleting effect. Like just getting 5 across the board, nothing else, just no second effect with a cooldown -1 weapon. I'd be fine with that. But knowing them, they're just going to be like, oh, if the enemy's at full HP, you get like 6 speed. Also, Flashing Blade has the base effect, because cooldown -1 is not what people run on Ira, after all. Yeah, I'm sure. Just like Shannon does not want to have cooldown -1 whatsoever. Yeah, I'm still bitter about a whole lot of things. But yeah, this stat line is pretty good. It allows you to run Time Pulse in Wrath into Bonfire. Cooldown -1 on the weapon means that you instantly get Bonfire ready, which means that's an extra 23 damage for just initiating on the enemy, because you proc Bonfire right away. 65 attack on top of it is really good, and if the base effect works, which most likely won't, it pushes your attack to 72, which is really solid. Speed is not exactly a problem. He already did not have too many speed problems, and now he gets an extra 4 speed because lol XD, I guess. So 52 speed, sorry, is pretty solid for that. It's just an all-purpose set in general. It allows you to just be able to have DC, kill enemy units more consistently. The reason we want Bonfire, by the way, for this and not something else is one reason alone, and that's just the fact that even if you don't have the spec ready completely on enemy phase, you'll get hit back, proc. 2 charge is just really easy to work with here. Do you know that any unit with the Ira stat line typically works better with lower health? 75% or less typically, because that means Wrath, that means Brazens, that means so many things that just combo into their stat line very well. And they don't really need too much outside help to get themselves going. A lot of people compare Ira at full HP and just go like, oh, she fails to kill X, X, and X. But the fact of the matter is, the way you should look at Ira is her at like 70% health or so. Because she is way stronger at 70% than at full. As weird as that is to say. Just because Wrath gets Ragnalastra instantly ready. Same thing for Larcey, same thing for Shannon. It's just kind of how it works for these units. The burst potential is insane, and because of Wrath you can't even use Guard to counter it. You will have to deal with a 20 damage Ragnall, and if she has taken too much damage, that 20 damage becomes 30. It's a bit similar here, except, you know, you need Time Pulse to make that work. But yeah, this is a more generalist build. As far as the second set goes, this is a Gale Force set. Cooldown -1 allows you to run Flashing Blade 4 with Desperation. It's basically a lot more safe. Because cooldown -1 means you don't need to get hit. The thing is, you kind of already have enough stats as is. You know, to take hits. So the cooldown -1 feels a bit wasted sometimes. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to also mention, and it's why attack res bond. 2 things. You can use Mirror Stance, I believe it's called. Or attack res on enemy phase. You can actually use that instead of this. The main idea behind this is just so you don't get too much damage when using Gale Force. 58 attack is already pretty high. Add to this an extra 7 potentially from Light Brent, which is 65 attack. You'll typically be killing units when you don't want to kill them. That's kind of a problem. So, adding attack to that would not exactly be a good idea. So instead, it's better to increase his enemy phase as a result. This does not kill his Gale Force, and it makes his enemy phase better. That's just a no-brainer, really. It's a bit of an odd pick, I know, but in general, the seal slot would have been a bit odd to work with. But yeah, this can work fairly decently. And the third set is definitely more for Aether raids. This set allows you to get 1 charge from his drink, 1 from Quicken Pulse. And because of Light Brand, you're basically at 1 charge left for Ignis. If you have someone with more HP than him with Infantry Pulse, that means he has Ignis ready, which makes him a good unit to spearhead your defense team comp. It's a bit odd, but it's pretty good in Infantry Pulse teams, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. I'll say one thing about this, though, and it's purely the one thing is that, well, you need an Infantry Pulse to make this work. I will also say that 48 HP is really good for Infantry Pulsing your allies, and I mean, in general, you also have access to 10 Dragon Flowers for Leif. Still, I don't think spending that many Dragon Flowers on him is too good, especially considering we're getting weekly banners with fucking Ira on them. Ira is insane, even now. Like, she is clearly beaten by Larce. Larce is completely superior. But the fact of the matter is, weekly banners are so much better than whatever garbage banner this is, the one with Larce. Because it's so easy to not just get the right unit. Shannon is just Larce but worse, so it's kind of a dud. Even though in my case I was more happy to get Shannon and Larce because it's Shannon, but you know, that's just my personal preference. But from a objective standpoint, Larce is just a better pick, and Shannon might as well be Eldigan for you know, Iris' first banner. It's basically the one unit you don't want to see, and, well, he's going to be just siphoning your entire pity rate all the time, which makes pulling for him, or her rather, not too great. Whereas Ira has, I believe, like, over twice the rate to be pulled from the get-go, so that's already a good start. And you don't have any such thing as a Shannon, you know, blocking you. In a way, though, it's the kind of set that works, but not exactly the type of unit I'd invest in. I'm saying this as from the point of view as a Dolphin that typically will plus 10 unit he likes. I plus 10 Nagi, and Nagi is not exactly a good unit, but a weapon is so good you can actually make it work with you know, a lot of support or speed. My Nagi hits 50 speed, and that makes our weapon a lot more threatening. Cooldown -1 on a dragon is really good. And that's just what it is. It's just, it needs a lot of support. And that's purely because our weapon is good that I even use her. Leif's weapon is not good, so even if I actually made his stats like super good, it does not matter. At the end of the day, I already have a plus 10 Ira, and he's just basically Ira with a slightly worse stat line, because he basically gets 1 less attack for 1 more speed, 1 point of speed he doesn't use, and loses 1 precious point of attack, which, that's another issue I have. For some reason they decided to give, first off, a condition to the 4 speed and def that he gets, which, first off, 4 speed is useless, the 4 def is okay, but it's, like, 4 speed and 4 def even without a restriction like this. Because you have to realize, this restriction basically tells you, can't use AoEs on this unit. If you use AoEs, you basically kill the speed def +4, which kind of hurts the fact that he has cooldown -1. Speed never was a problem, def never was a problem. The problem is that his attack is straight garbage at times. So how about, you know, making it a attack +4 with rest +4, making his bulk a bit better and more consistent? I don't know. That just feels like the way to go, personally. But it is what it is. Not much I can do about that one. The state for Leif is depressing, to say the least. I'm at least glad the legendary version is good, but still, it's just not right. Every lord got at least a good refine, at least at the time where they got it. Like, Roy's refine is bad now, but back then it was good. Hollywood is insane now. Ephraim is okay, but he was a lot better before. Besides, he got a new alt anyway. That's basically just him, but better, despite the fact that he downgraded from his ultimate weapon to his starting weapon. It's still better than the base version. I don't understand. Anyway. Ike. Legendary Ike is very slept on. Chris does not exist. Corin got Fallen Corin. Byleth is at least decent. And then you have Jugrol. I hate this. It really does feel like whoever's the director right now at IS for Heroes has such contempt for Jugrol people. Like they were like the fantastic director that decided, you know, like the Quan banner, the Lowin banner with like the Ira banner, Sigurd, and so on. That dude is gone and was replaced by the most soulless dude ever. I don't know. Anyway, next up is Henry. And I have to say, I've heard a lot of people complain that this weapon is not good. I don't get it. I really don't get it. It's a really good weapon. So, this weapon, at start of combat, if foe's attack is less than unit's attack plus 3, which, by the way, that's like 45 at plus 10, inflicts attack rest minus 6 on foe during combat and guard, basically. Now, the best way to sum this up is basically a flat 6 attack, def, and res for Henry, which is basically a 3 people Alto without the speed. That does not require positioning. When you realize this, it's kind of insane. Because it's just basically free stats. It does not require positioning, it does not require a certain phase. You know, like Halatom are better on enemy phase than player phase. Corvus Dome does not have that problem. It's just, regardless of the phase, it's gonna be good. The guard effect is also really good and absolutely required on tanks. So it works very well for him. Overall, this is a very good weapon, and the refine fixes a lot of issue. The Raven Tome effect is pretty irrelevant, but I don't think they would have given this refine to an Altome anyway. And besides, having an Altome with this would have been just kind of awkward, because then you'd be still like stuck on enemy phase, whereas with this you can actually make Henry a player phase unit if you want to. Now, if you really wanted him to just basically be stuck in that one role, sure, an Altum as the base would have been a bit better. Personally, I don't know if I would have really thought that this would have made him that much better. I think he's fine as is. But let's talk about build first. You'll kind of understand where I'm coming from. So this is the obvious one. This is with Special Spiral, which basically means that your 3 cooldown becomes 1 on Iceberg, get hit, proc Iceberg. Simple. You basically get 22 damage for free. Your 47 attack here basically becomes 52 because of attack res bond, 58 because of Corvus Tome. 58 attack, not bad. And as far as res is concerned, you get an extra 22 damage basically from Iceberg. This makes him fairly decent. He can definitely also use Res Smoke, But I'd just wait for a character to drop with it and get added as a 3 to 4 star if we even get those anymore. If they just decided to stop doing those, I swear to God, I'm going to be just... Why? You have to realize, right? We get an FE4 banner, we don't get one. Of course, it's the FE4 banner that gets shafted. Just like the FE4 banner got Tanya before, the FE5 banner got Tanya, but no demotes. Watch as we get no demote or 3 to 4 star on the FE4 banner now. Jesus Christ. Anyway. I just wait for Red Smoke to be added to the poll as a demote. Brunia is not worth the kill. Honestly, Brunia is just too good a unit to kill for just Red Smoke anyway. But that's just the way I look at it. Anyway. So this is that. After this is mostly player face sets. A lot of people fail to realize that Henry can actually be fairly good on offense. Keep in mind, the Stone can actually very well work on any phase. Even though most people are just going to just slap quick riposte on him and just say like, man, this weapon sucks and call it a day. So Sparrow 5 here basically means that you end up at, I believe, 46 speed. Low attack speed pushes that to 49. You still have flowers. So one thing you can do also is just not run low attack speed. If you already have flowers on him, that is. Because then what you can do is just run special spiral. Which means you can just hit, get hit, proc. Which means skills such as Ignis can actually be used instead of Moonbow. It opens a lot of room for stronger special and stronger combos. Ignis, of course, is quite good with this. Because it basically means 33 damage. And you just have that coming out of your ass, basically. And you're looking at 63 attack on top of it. 63 attack is not bad. So, you know. 63 and 46 right now, so I guess with like 5 flowers at 64, 47. Which is good offense. But you also have good bulk behind it, and you hit res, which is, you know, it's rare to have a mage that hits quick, hard, and can take hits. The only thing I can say about Henry that kind of blows is the fact that he can't really ploy. Even if you go for a res refine, it's just not enough res, which is kind of unfortunate. But it is what it is. In general, though, one thing to note is that a Fox Tome can be a bit better than the Corvus Tome at times. The thing is, Corvus Tome will also give you at least some measure of enemy phase, which is not exactly something you'll get from, say, a Fox Tome. But yeah, it's overall fairly solid. Another thing you can do is this. Well, that's basically the set I was talking about, but at the same time with a Brazen. Brazen attack speed works very easily because he ends up having quite a bit of speed. Getting hit and hurt into Brazen range is not impossible. In fact, it's very doable. So you can just use that on top of Sparrow, and at that point you have 42 speed on enemy phase, on top of 42 def, 35 res, and of course 54 attack. And that's without Corvus Tome in mind. So it's quite solid. Just keep in mind, until you are in Brazen, you're not at 100% power and therefore can be fairly just prone to getting killed. That lack of speed can definitely hurt. But yeah, this is definitely a lot more, what's the word? A lot more risky than the set I've shown before, this one. But the payoff is definitely there, if you want to try it. Next up is Cordelia, a character that people say the refine is absolute trash, but clearly they don't know what they're talking about. So Cordelia comes in with 35 attack and speed, and has a 10 might brave weapon, which has only -2 speed, which means that she doesn't really lose a whole lot of speed at that point. And besides, the weapon also just basically make that -2 a +2, because it offers 4 speed as well as 4 attack when over 70% HP. I don't understand why people are like, oh, I can't quad with this, I can't use Despo with the brave weapon, that makes Cordelia trash. Guys, you don't need a million hits with her to kill. Let me just show you this, right? What you're looking at here is 47 speed already. Good start, so you're actually quadding sometimes when you actually need to. But an initiation, that's 68 attack. Makes Heavy Blade pretty consistent, doesn't it? Also means that you hit and then proc Moonbow. So that's even more damage. If with 68 attack you fail to kill in your 2 hits, and you have to quad, cool. The quad is still very much possible, and the only units that are able to take your 2 hits and requiring you to quad to kill them, are typically going to be units you just can't kill anyway. Okay? Be there a requirement or not. Unit like Winter Sophist, which, I mean, that's just how it is. The thing with Cordelia, though, is unlike Aston Katria, she can work in so many more team comps, and we're starting to get very dangerous reds. In fact, I'm actually thinking of making a 4-star +10 Cordelia with her weapon, purely because at the end of the day, if I have to deal with Altina, well, she's a counter. She's very easy to use, combos extremely well with quite a few units, and in fact, even if Altina's on a death tile, you can slaughter her like cattle, because at the end of the day, what's stopping you from comboing her into a, oh, I don't know, Camilla? You know, Camilla providing up to 10 attack by herself, making your 66 attack, or sorry, 68 attack. Well, 78 with a brave weapon, and that's with one person supporting you. Well, one person and something buffing your attack by 6. That basically means you can use a mixed team comp with like Camilla, Cordelia, and then 2 other units that are not flyers. One of them with attack tactic, and everything else does not matter. The reason why you would want sturdy impact is to limit damage you might take. The 10 def is really the main reason you want this, because then you can keep the 70% HP a lot more easily. Because at the end of the day, that 4 attack is basically 8 damage, and that 4 speed can actually provide you a quad when where you actually need the quad, or also reduce some reduction that skills such as Close Call can do, which can be definitely helpful in certain cases. She is absolutely insane in a goad team, by the way. Which is why she has a goad here. That said, in goads you will not have visible buffs unless you have a rally on one of them, which is not really too great, or Earth Dance on Legendary Azura, in which case, you know, that works. But yeah, she's definitely a lot better than people give her credit for. Killing Altina alone is really a big deal, because Altina, especially in Arena, when it's Astra, as well as like whatever else in Arena Assault, you'll see Altina pop up constantly. I had one run where I had to deal not with 1, not with 2, not with 3, but 5 Altinas. It's not fun. So having any kind of counter to her is really welcomed. And just so happens that Cordelia is a good counter. Whereas Blade Tone Flyers don't always get the job done because of death tiles. I'm not joking. This is real. I wish it wasn't. Thankfully, she can also kill much worse as well. Alwyn Mur as well, for example. She can also kill quite a few blue units, which makes her fairly solid. The reason why you want Mystic Boost also is because the one fight where you might have to quad and kill the unit with this will typically, potentially, maybe get your HP too low. Mystic Boost is there to remedy this, which means you don't need a healer and you just kill, you know, easier targets to heal back up to the point where you can quad again, or get the 4 attack and speed back. It's overall fairly solid and definitely easy to work with. Heavy Blade Moonbow is also just really good to deal with those high bulk unit, because at the end of the day, if you do have more attack than them, you'll hit, proc, get hit, proc again, which is really solid. 2 Moonbow in one fight on top of having over 70 attack with a Brave Weapon, with little to no setup? Damn. That's Cordelia. So yeah, overall, really good unit. A lot of people are definitely going to be sleeping on her. And to those people I say, how do you think that? Anyway, let's talk about the rest. Now, there is a lot of exclamation mark here, so I'm gonna go column to columns and explain my reasoning for it. I actually need to have a word pad for this. I believe there's 47 units that changed tiers. So Eliwood went from S to S+. I don't think I have to explain too much why. He is one of the best Gale Force units, and he's also able to provide support. He's a good ployer, because he has the rest for it, and his Refine, the Blazing during no Refine, effectively just gives him, you know, 10 defense, 10 speed. It fixes his speed, it fixes his def, making it, I believe, like 34 def and 34 res on initiation, and he also shuts down special, because it's basically special fighter. And on top of that, he does not need Heavy Blade. Heavy Blade, which is an extremely consistently prized seal on so many units. So yeah, Eliwood is a beast. Honestly, I was debating on making him S+ for the past 2 to 3 months. He's just a really good unit in general. I decided to take the plunge now. As for Alm, he went from S+ to S tier. This is not exactly too much of a surprise. Alm has piss poor attack. Base Alm, anyway. I believe he has 33 attack or 30 attack. I believe it's 33. It's been a while since I looked at his stats, but to put it simply, back when he got the Refine, it was a really good Refine. Okay? But as time went on, we got more and more Dragon Killers, which kind of just eroded his niche over time. Being able to kill dragons is cool and all, but like, why use Alm if you can use Legendary Marth, you know, for example? Legendary Marth, who has a Dragon Killer, basically a Fire Sweep Dragon Killer with Dragon Breaker. Like, Jesus Christ, is that enough? Legendary Marth just does his niche better overall as a result, and while yes, Alm gets to have the Brave effect against everything, not just Dragon units, well, it's just not enough. The problem is, if he does end up getting a hit in on himself of like 20 damage, unlike Cordelia, he doesn't keep the Brave effect, so he can't heal himself back up to full by killing weaker units. So that makes him not exactly self-sufficient. You can use Renewal as a seal to try to fix that, but then you lose attack for the actual kills you try to do with Double Lion anyway. He can't really enemy phase anything, because if he enemy phase anything, he then becomes useless for the rest of the match. Alm is just very clunky now. He's decent still. After all, he's still S tier. Definitely worth refining, but he's definitely not as good as he used to be. Next up, Karel. Went from S tier to S minus. I decided to at least make a tier difference between Fur and Karel. Fur is a lot more survivalist. What the hell? Fur is able to survive a lot easier because she can actually, you know, first off, she has better bulk, and 2, she can proc attack ploys and such skills. It also helps that she's a 3 to 4 star, though that's not really taken in consideration on my tier list. But yeah, Fur is more accessible and overall better. The only thing Karel has is a bit more attack and more health. The health is cool and all because it makes Reprisal actually hit decently well, but even if Reprisal hits decently well, it does not really matter. Moonbow with Nameless Blade Wrath is typically able to do very similar numbers, and Karel, the second that his HP is too low, is useless. The best thing about Nameless Blade is the fact that you can proc a special, get hit, and then proc again. It is the reason why Ira is so good with a Slaying Edge. It's the reason why Larcey is so much better than Shannon, and so on and so forth. So what happens when you just don't have the bulk to be able to get the second hit in? Well, you lose a lot of potential. And that's kind of the problem. Karel is in that weird spot where he has too much HP and not enough bulk where it matters. And so I decided to make it more clear that Fur is superior to Karel. Other than this is Ogma, also S to S minus. It's not exactly a surprise. His weapon is good because it actually provides heavy blade, which makes it easy for him to run Gale Force. And it also provides him 4 attack and speed for having an infantry or flyer unit around him. This is an extremely easy condition to fulfill and a pretty solid weapon effect to have. The thing though is that his res is kind of atrocious and nothing gets addressed about this, which makes it kind of iffy. And because he does not have cooldown -1, stuff such as Gale Force Inspiration is out of the question. So if he takes a lot of damage, or rather, if he takes not much damage and he's still at 80% HP, but because he's at 80% HP, or 70% HP, a dragon one-shots him, then it's a bit iffy. It's solid though, and definitely does help him. In fact, Ogma is a lot better than people really realize. A lot of people would just see Ogma and be like, it's like A tier, but it's really not. It's a good weapon. Next up is the A+ tier, and oh boy, did I change a lot of unit here. So, Alphonse, let's put it simple. TA does nothing for you. The only reason you refine him is because it actually allows him to get Brazen Attack Def instead of Defiant whatever that he had before. But even then, the Brazen is good, but it's not exactly that amazing. And the fact that Alphonse cannot get Merge is kind of another reason that it hurts him somewhat. It's not great. I'll just put it this way. It's helpful, but it's just average, essentially. If you like him, it's still a good refine, but that's pretty much it. Sita went from S- to A+ as well, purely because her attack is too low. Having Flashing Blade in your weapon is cool, but the double effectiveness you have, which is Cav, which are basically dead content, and Armors, which are only really appearing in AA nowadays, is not exactly amazing. And in a lot of cases, even the fact that you can just run Gale Force because of Flashing Blade on your weapon does not really work. Because a lot of unit run skills such as Steady Stance for Special Fighter, especially Armored Unit, which is used to counter. Which makes Gale Force unwieldy, and because it's unwieldy, it makes her inconsistent. against the main unit that she's made to deal with. That's not exactly a good thing. And also, I suppose I should say this, but Claire also fell down a tier for the very same reason. That, and I'm just gonna be honest here, the only red unit that she actually shuts down is like Zelgus and H. Murr. That's it. Oh, and the new Hector, I guess. But that's like it. Whereas Sita has at least Surtur and like another 10 green armored units. The problem is just that our Gale Force is inconsistent because, well, wary fighters that he stands for and such skills. And no follow-up. For once, no follow-up would have been a fantastic, options. In general, I don't understand why we never got a Flashing Blade weapon with, on top of Flashing Blade, no follow-up, because it makes Gale Force a lot more consistent. I guess the closest we got was female Byleth and male Byleth, because the weapon essentially gets rid of the guard effect from Steady Stance 4 that the enemy might use. It gets rid of that from Special Fighter. And on top of this, if you ask Flashing Blade, it actually works really well, because it has also no follow-up. But, yeah. Still kinda odd to me. Next up is Eldigan from S- to A+. Two reasons, Ares is just a better option overall, and while yes, Eldigan can actually work pretty well with his weapon and Life and Death, or Dark Missile Tain, Ares kinda just does most things better, and for the Fury set, it's not exactly something I would go out of my way for. It's a decent effect, but not much more, and kinda requires him to be plus 10, and or have speed plus to really shine, which is not exactly ideal. Pella also went tumbling down from S- to A+. The main reason is just because her weapon is just that bad. It really does hurt my heart to see Ast and Katria in S+, while Pella is A+, but the fact of the matter is gem weapons on a brave weapon is like the most cruel joke possible. I do think if Cancel Affinity ever becomes a seal, Palla will go back in S- and potentially even S tier. The fact that she has to lose her B skill to function as a unit, well, that's not exactly ideal. She can work as a Surtur counter if you don't get rid of, the TA effect. But then again, what else doesn't? So, it just doesn't really work too good. Next up is Roy, went down another tier. Shocking no one because his weapon is just not that helpful. Quick Repose 5 is helpful if you are slow, but Roy can actually go speed plus and actually break the 45 plus speed, even the 50 speed. At that point, what is the point of the Binding Blade? I mean, seriously, 4 def 4 res on enemy phase, that's what's the point? Hell nah, just run a Slaying Edge and it's just better. That's just how it is. Or Heart's Blade, for example, which is 3 attack speed def res on both phase if you have one dude next to you. Better than 4 def and res when you get attacked, I can tell you that much. Seth went from S- to A+, because Speed Tactic is now a lot more available, because it was given for free. But also because Ruby Sword is not as good as it used to be. Ruby Sword was a lot better because green units used to be extremely prominent. Making Ruby Sword, and the fact that he was a support unit, therefore, being a support unit able to kill down select few units, being a decent niche, well, that's kind of gone. So, well, he's still a good support unit. It's just the rest is not exactly amazing, Lanku went from A+ to A tier. Surprising no one. That attack is absolutely atrocious, and Life and Death does not do much for him. Using 5 def, 5 res for 5 attack is not exactly worth it. But Jay, it also gives 5 speed. He doesn't need the speed. You're actually hurting yourself more than it helps you. And besides, at the end of the day, if you're running Life and Death for something like an AoE set, just run Navarre. Kind of funny to say that Navarre is just a better Lonku at this point. Next up is Anna. Anna went from A to A-. Not exactly surprising a whole lot of people, I think. Armor Smasher as the base effective of the weapon is already just a red flag. But adding Swift Sparrow on top of it on a unit that doesn't need the speed really is just... Okay, but why? What did you think was gonna happen from this? Hey look guys, it's an Armor Smasher with 2 more might. Wowzer pooper scooper, and you get 4 attack when you initiate with it. Cool. It's not that helpful. It just doesn't really work with her. If she had Sturdy Blow, she would actually be like A or potentially even A+. Because the fact of the matter with Anna is the fact that her def is absolutely abysmal. I believe it's at something like 22. So having 4 extra defense to make it a bit easier to survive and get to Desperation is just actually fantastic. But instead she got 4 attack and speed, which were just not exactly the stats she was struggling with in the first place. It's just overall fairly awkward. Zephiel went from A+ to A-. Honestly, I have no idea why he was an A+. The fact is, you just want to replace his weapon. The Juntron weapon is cool and all, but the problem with the Juntron weapon is that at the end of the day, you can't run Distinct Def on the weapon and then Close Def on something else. That's cute! But what you can just do is just run literally any other weapon, refine it to defense, which provides 2 more HP, by the way. Just cost and then run, obviously, you know, Warding Stance. This basically gives you 6 res and 4 def on enemy phase, as well as an extra 2 HP over Exact getting refined. See, that's the thing though. If you have Distant Def plus Close Def, you get 6 def 6 res, versus the 4 def 6 res of just refining the weapon. But the thing is, if you refine a weapon like Slaying Edge or Heart's Blade or anything of the sort, then you have the freedom of actually choosing from many weapons. The Guard Sword is fantastic. Heart's Blade basically means that you end up with more bulk overall than the Exact could ever give, as well as more attack, because the Juntron weapon is 16 might. So that's, you know, pretty solid. So as a result, his weapon is just kind of not helpful. In fact, I think I might even put him down even lower, potentially B or C tier. There's just way more to gain from getting rid of his weapon. That's just how it is. Next up, we're moving to the mages now. So, Katarina went from A+ to A. That's just because a weapon is not really good anymore. The Refine basically allows you to get an Altom effect, I believe. Or wait, no, it's Speed and Rest Ploy, I believe. It's cool. The problem is that Arvis is cheaper and not 5-star exclusive. So we're already there. That's not really a good thing. But Arvis has also a better stat line. Another thing is that for some reason they decided to give an Altom effect to Katarina. Let me just put it this way, okay? They gave an Altom to Sorin. They give an Altom to Katarina. They do not give an Altom to Henry. They do not give an Altom to Bowie. What? Anyway, so let's just put it this way. 14 def, or I believe 15 def on Katarina is not too great for an Altom, so that's not great to begin with. But Vol Flame is overall just a better weapon than what Katarina has, in my opinion. Just because Harvest's stat line complements it so much better. Harvest's stat line is actually really solid, especially for a red mage. Especially for a red mage of that time. Sturdy Impact fixes his death stat, which is the only stat that is actually not too great. So, you know, pretty solid overall. Whereas, well, Katarina just really gets no damage increase, speed, which, okay. It's just in general, why use this? Even if you want to debuff speed and res, loot exists, and loot is just better. At least at it. Sophia went from A minus, or A to A minus, sorry. The reason is quite simple. I believe she gets bracing stance. That's it. 4 def and res when attacked. With a Raven Tome? Like, nobody uses Raven Tome on Sophia. That was something when Sophia got a refine, it was like 7, 8, 9 months too late for the Bolin meta, so I have no idea what was the point of this refine, to be honest. Leo went from A to B. Honestly, the way his refine works should just be like if you have more depth than the mage, instead of if you have more like 5 more depth than the mage, then it works. And it only works against ranged units for some odd reason. Leo's refine is okay. A lot of people seem to think that it's absolute trash, while it's just not. It's an okay refine. The problem is just it requires too much setup. Keep in mind, Leo is a 148 BST unit, and they're asking you to have 5 more defense than the enemy. That shit don't work. It doesn't work for him, and therefore it's not a good idea. Next up, the Tickies. Honestly, I'll just put it as blunt as I can. There is no reason to run Breath of Fog unless you're using Adult Tiki, and if you're using Adult Tiki, it's purely to one-shot. The idea is just basically to hit really hard once and kill with it. With like DC Special Spiral, sorry. With Bonfire. And just take the hit, kill. That's it. If you do not do this, it's not worth it. You're just better off using Lightning Breath with Bonus Doubler. Bonus Doubler will basically effectively mean you'll almost have as much attack, but you get an extra 6 speed, 6 death, and 6 res. It's a bit iffy in certain modes, mostly, you know, Panic Maynard Chan in Aether raids, but other than this, it's overall just superior. If you're not running any set that relies on specials though, Breath of Fog is typically better. And that's it for red. Let's talk about blues now, shall we? Inoko went from S to S-. It's still a really good weapon she has, it just can be a bit awkward. Overall, she's still a solid unit, it's just that there's definitely better out there at this point. I do think that she's still worth the refine if you plan on using her though. Tana also went from S to S-. It's, again, for a very similar reason. A weapon used to be very good, just like Inoko. Back when they were released, they were actually some of the best refine of the game. But over time, it kind of declined. Especially Inoko, let me just put it this way. How is it called? Air orders and ground orders. They kind of just now exist. And those skills are just miles better than having just, you know, Inoko for this.
The 4 attack and speed the weapon gives to Inoka is also extremely valuable for her. So, you know, it's overall a really good weapon for her either way. It's just, there's skills that completely supersede the Pref weapon here. Tana is also still solid. It's just, well, let's just say mixed tank as far as, you know, blue flyers are not rare or scarce, I suppose. A good example would be just looking at, say, Altena. Altena has 20 res, but because of Gable, gets basically 25. Unless you're dealing with a flyer, she'll typically get either the same mileage, as long as she's in quick repose range anyway, as Tana does. Unless dealing with dragons. Anything physical, she has more def than Tana by miles. Anything like res base, unless they're like one ranged units, she'll take just about the same damage. It all comes down to speed, but I won't go back on Altena on that one. If you want to know my thoughts on her, just watch the banner review. It's going to give you a better opinion than just me trying to regurgitate what I said back then. Overhaul also went down a tier from S- to A+. Very similar reason to Tana. Tana actually has speed though, which makes her a bit better overall, because she can actually prevent double. Overhaul cannot really prevent doubles. She's still fairly decent. It's just the Refine is truly showing age nowadays. Claire I've already touched upon. Basically the same reason as Sita. Too many things that make so that you just don't get charges when charging up for Gale Force, which is typically what you run on her. And also the effectiveness, not really touching any key units anyway. Like, the few key units it touches, she still dies from her anyway. Like, I'm thinking of Winter Sophis or Winter Marth. Those two units are like the plague for her. She can't do anything to them. If she hits Marth, Marth typically has close counter and will one-shot her. If she deals with Sophis, she won't even do enough damage to do all of HP and then promptly get one shot and heal her, you know, Sophis back to full. No matter how you look at it, you just can't deal with those matchups, and a lot of matchups are like this for her. Blue is a horrible color when you are an armor killer. That's just how it is. Which reminds me that the new banner decided to make Tsubasa a fucking armor killer again, and I just want to die. It's like they don't actually think of what they're doing. Whatever. Next up, Ephraim. Or, sorry, Shanna. Shanna went from A+ to A tier, similar to Claire. Shanna is kind of iffy, whereas units such as Minerva at least doesn't have a whole lot of competition. Shanna just has way too much competition. See, Minerva is only one tier above Shanna, but the fact of the matter is, Minerva is kind of one of a kind. The only unit that comes close to her stat line is Summer Enos, but Summer Enos has, well, a bunch less res. Minerva, you can basically just run attack res bond 4 with aerobatics or fly formation, and then you'll have so much res, well, you'll have good res and defense to a point where you become a good mixed attacker. Your attack becomes good, your speed is workable, so, you know, she becomes fairly solid in general and hard to take down. Despite Shanna having the same weapon, she kind of just have, well, she has less attack, by only 1 point, mind you, but her defense is kind of atrocious, and Lance Flyers have so much competition. just look at it this way, right? Est exists. Shanna is a very similar stat line to Est. Except she has less attack, she has about the same res, she has less def, but does not get a brave 19 might weapon with a armor effectiveness, which is the only unit type that might actually be able to tank her, so, you know, it's fine. No matter how you look at it, Shanna is just so all class, it's not even funny. There's so many Lance Flyers that just are better. Hell, just look at Tsubasa. Tsubasa is still better than she is. That's kind of just how it is. Oh, jeez. So, yeah. Ephraim. Similar situation as Oboro, Tana, and Nonoka. Back then, his weapons were already iffy, though, unlike Tana and Inoka. The weapons were fairly iffy, like, if you have over 80% HP, you can get a follow-up. Cool. Jesus Christ, this reeks of just old. And that's just kind of because it is. It was a okay weapon, especially when we got Flame Segment back then. But now it's just, well, it's not exactly worth it, is it? So, yeah. Next up is Tsubaki. It went from A+ to A tier. I actually had to find my old tier list to see where he fell, because I did not write him down. There's 47 units, so I was bound to miss one. Tsubaki is, well, if you're going to be building him, you'll realize that his attack is atrocious, no matter how you look at it. And so, the main way to fix him is Brazens. Brazens do not work with the Refine, so what you want to do is typically just take a stat Refine instead of the actual Refine. That's just kind of how it is. Because locking yourself out of Brazens is basically akin to giving up. It just... 7 true damage is not enough. If you can get 7 attack on top of extra stats, it's just better. So, yeah. Other than this, Florina went from A to A-. More or less the same as Tana. It's basically the same Refine, but less stats, and providing 4 across the board instead of only 7 def and res. It's okay, it's just that Florina requires a lot of skill to function with this. For example, Steady Stance 4, and even if you run Steady Stance 4, you can't really deal with ranged units. At the end of the day, what's the point of giving DC to a unit that archers is completely shut down and in general needs a lot of support to really function, you know. It's just better at that point to just focus on melee matchups where she actually gets the stats. But yeah, even then the 4 across the board is not exactly helpful because her stat line are just all over the place, but not even the good all over the place. It's not like Itsuki kind of level of all over the place. It's just too little in defense, too little in speed, too little in attack, too much in res. I don't know what they were thinking. It's just kind of how it is, I suppose. Next up is Loot. Now this is actually one that increased in rating. This one went from S- to S tier. Reason is quite simple. She was already very high S- tier before the tier list update. I was this. How can I put this? Loot was one of these ranking where I was just unsure how I felt about the ranking. I was S- or S tier, and I was kind of just going back and forth with it. Cordelia is a similar case because Alencia is red, which is a better color, for example. So I thought Cordelia would be, for example, S tier. But after careful consideration, purely because of Altina, she went from S to S+. She was kind of in the middle, but Altina was the deciding factor. So yeah, that gives you an idea. Loot is just a really good unit. She's a very good cheerleader. She's a very good support unit. Very good in AR, for example. And even if she does basically nothing, she still does great at supporting her party members. And if she has to fight, the 4 across the board of her weapon works fantastically with her stat line. Unlike a character like Rebecca, well, Luth has one of the best stat line any mage of this game has gotten. Honestly, even to this day. Her stat line is just extremely insane, and especially considering the 150 BST era. That's just nuts. If Loot had, like, been released nowadays, with this type of stat line, with an extra 12 BST, with this pref, well, I'll just say this, she'd be godlike. And probably S+ tier. But at the same time, she probably would not be getting a refine. Because she would already be so good. Next up is Lind. Lind went... Well, actually. Lind and Teltu went from A to A-. For a similar reason. Well, not really similar reason. Teltu, in her case, is a case of... You take the weapon and you don't give a shit about refining it. If you're refining it, if you refine it, sorry, you go for the attack refine to make AoE stronger. That's kind of just it. That's all you can really do with a weapon, because Darting Blow is an awful refine for this. It just doesn't work with what you try to run on her typically, which makes it just kind of iffy overall. Lind, in her case, is just... Man, I don't know what they were smoking. Lind is very quick, and already is not exactly struggling with damage. So what do IS decide to do? How about a weapon that gives extra attack and speed? Okay, that sounds dumb, but do go on. Except you only get the attack and speed with very specific weapon type being near you. Why? Especially healer and mages? Like, what? Thankfully, if you use Lind as a pair with Merrick, it's not a bad idea. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, we're going to get Blarfox, and the second we get Blarfox, this is going to become a B, potentially even C tier refine. And now I know what people will be saying right away. Jay, just use Dark Aura. Dark Aura basically gives the same amount of stats, but it's based on having a axe, sword, or lance unit, which is very easy to work with. Fair enough, random person on the internet. But the thing is, she doesn't care about the speed, so all she gets is attack. And at that point, you want to know what else gives attack? Blade Tomes. They give lots and lots of attack, in fact up to 30. Or 24 plus the 6 attack itself. Yeah. That weapon is trash. Not to mention, at the end of the day, if you really want the speed, at one point we're going to get Fox Tomes for blue units. At which point you'll just run this Fuckstone and Sturdy Impact, as well as maybe Sturdy Blow, and then she'll be actually bulky in both def and res. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you sit down to look at it, it's just extremely underpowered. Sorry. That's kind of just how it is. And I know what else someone else will say. Why is it so bad on her but so good on Delphia? Delphia's speed is actually not that great. In fact, it's actually only at 33. So the speed actually helps her. That said, the second Blarfox becomes a weapon, she's also going to be dropping several tiers. No matter how you look at it, getting 4 attack speed def res versus getting 5 attack and speed, you'll take the former. Especially when the condition is not team dependent for the former. That's just how it is. Until then, though, Delphia will stay where she is. Lynn's weapon just does not really work for her, which is why it goes here. No one is going to be wasting dew for that weapon, unless they have a very specific team comp in mind, like Chaz did. It's pretty iffy all around. And that's blue. Let's talk about greens now. So greens have gotten quite a few of updates, of upgrades even. But I'll start with the axes. So, Arthur. Yeah. A unit I basically ranked last month is already going down a tier. The main reason was because I was honestly pretty iffy about it last month. And I decided to just go with my gut and say, no, I'm going to just down it 1 tier. Arthur's weapon is very gimmicky, and the fact that, you have to get hit by a debuff for it to work, and you don't get rid of the debuff at all, that's not really good. If you get hit by a chill attack, for example, say goodbye to any buff you have. That's just how it is. You basically will have no stat increase if you do. Same thing with def, res, or speed. I guess you can see it the other way around, whereas the weapon basically means you don't lose the 7 points, but even then, it's still not great. So yeah, I decided to put it down a tier just because it's a bit inconsistent. It's still a good refine, mind you, but I do find it a bit too gimmicky for my tastes. As far as Raven goes, I was debating demoting him a bit, and then I did. The thing with Raven is quite simple, really. Raven is a good unit, but Life and Death does not exactly help him. Let me explain. The 5 speed basically falls in dead hands. The attack is okay, but I mean, you'll go attack plus and you'll still have less attack than Linus. No matter how you look at it, Basilicos is better used on Linus, because Linus does not have as much speed as Raven, so no points is really wasted on speed. He also has more BST to begin with from Raven, and on top of this, even if you go attack plus on Raven, Linus ends up with 1 more attack. Keep in mind, I'm always considering the extra points that you get for the first merge, as in like the 1 HP and then the 1 in the 2 highest base stats at level 1. In which case Linus's 37-33 becomes 38-34. So, yeah. Even he has a bit too much speed with Basilicos Refine, but it's not as bad as Raven. At the end of the day, if you're wondering which one you should refine between Raven and Linus, it's Linus always. So I decided to make him go down a tier because Linus is just always better than Raven. Them being in the same tier just does not make sense to me. Next up is Hector. Hector went from S- to A+, going down another tier. Berserk Armaz is a good weapon, but it's really only good in the hand of the player. It's awful in the hand of the AI. It's very easy to play around. And at the same time, it's also kind of iffy even in the end of the player. You basically need to just not get one round KO'd, which is already pretty iffy, because if you use double Raf, you don't have Wary Fighter to block follow-ups, meaning you get hit, don't one-shot whatsoever unless you have Brave Lucina support, and then maybe, but if you have Brave Lucina support, kind of defeats the point of Raf in the first place, doesn't it? Or double Raf to have Bonfire ready. So, you know, it's already kind of awkward and shaky. But at the same time, if you run, say, Bolt Fighter, for example, well, you might just get pelt off and just killed before you get there. If you run Wary Fighter, you'll be missing kills left and right because you can't reuse Quick Riposte. In general, it's just not great. And base Hector does not exactly have a stat line that holds up really well. So, yeah, it's kind of just whatever. It's an okay refine. But frankly, I would not even focus on this as like a 10th choice, let alone first. Next up is Shirshi. Shirshi went from A to A-. Panic Ploy on a unit with a Brave weapon is not exactly great. You'll typically prefer to get an attack refine just because it actually provides you helpful stats. Or Speed Plus if you go for a Speed Shirshi with Swift Sparrow 3 and, you know, the typical skills. Swift Sparrow 3 as well as Swift Sparrow 2 for 11 speed on top of Speed Plus, which basically makes it with the Speed Refine 27 speed, with the Swift Sparrow 5 that's 38 speed, with Buff that's 44 speed, with Merges that's 48 speed, with Flowers that's 49 speed. Yeah, you get the idea. It's good. Speed, good. Attack, good. Panic Ploy is very, very gimmicky. If you're going to be using this for Panic Ploy, it's typically an A for raids. And it's typically not good. It's basic. You typically use this to combo into a Panic Mainer, so you have 4 rows of Panic effectively. And try to catch people off guard. That's basically the extent of what Shirshi's axe can do, which is why it's only an A-. Next up are the Green Mage. Alright, Deirdre and Julia kind of go hand in hand because base Naga is absolutely not good. Close counter being, you know, only working against Dragon is just... But Divine Naga is the real deal. This is the only good prep Jugrel has ever gotten, so I mean... let's talk about it. Deirdre and Julia have workable speed, and at high merges you can actually run Fury to make, you know, Divine Naga get the 3 across the board more consistently. The fact of the matter is that 3 across the board basically make their speed salvageable. Without it, it's not too great. With it, hell yeah, you basically can have a very, very good unit on your hand. And on top of that, they delete any buff the enemy might have unless they're spurs, which is really, really good in general. It gives a lot of options to Deirdre and Julia, and, well, that makes them really solid. It also makes them very frustrating to deal with, because you just cannot buff with anything but spurs against her, which I guess Brave Lucina can do pretty well. But the Dragon effectiveness... what the hell did I just say? The Dragon effectiveness is still really solid here and there. to just catch people off guard. It makes her very frustrating to deal with, and Deirdre, in Deirdre's case, she's even better than characters such as Trazier because of this because of this weapon. I stand by my words on this. I do think Trazier is better than Deirdre on low merges, but high merges, Deirdre is absolutely wiping the floor with Trazier. And Jolia can also say the same thing, more or less, because she ends up with, I believe, only 1 speed difference to Deirdre. So, they can both do this. Though I do think Deirdre is slightly better at it. Sonya also went from S- to S tier. This is not really surprising either. Sonya has been more and more used as time went on in Aether raids with Infantry Pulse team. She's really frustrating to deal with. If you're going to just not have a good mixed tank, AoE sets are going to absolutely wipe you apart. And if you have to deal with Gleecies, even if you have a tank that's like made to deal with AoEs, that tank's going to take a ton of damage regardless. So no matter how you look at it, you're basically losing. Sonya is just really frustrating to deal with this. And another one that's also went up a tier for the same reason as Sonya is Merrick. Merrick went from A+ to S-. Because Dark Excalibur is just that good. The 2 charge to start is really good. And Merrick actually has a good chunk of HP, which means he can also inflict, or not really inflict, but like buff his partners with Infantry Pulse. Infantry Pulse essentially just means, hey, everyone gets charges, everyone's ready, which makes it a lot harder to approach. Merrick also has a really good pref. Cooldown -1 in Excalibur is insanely good on him. It actually is better tome between Dark Excalibur and Excalibur. I'd say Excalibur is the better tome outside of AR. In AR defense, Dark Excalibur is simply better though. Next up is Nino. So Nino is not great. She basically gets a wave skill. In other words, she gets 6 attack all the time. And if you waste your C slot on top of the refine, then you get 6 attack at all time. Which then means you're extremely prone to getting wrecked by panic. So yeah, it's a thing. It's not exactly what I'd call amazing, but it's alright. It's only A tier though, or A-, because it's not exactly the type of refine you should go for. Even if you don't go for a refine at all on Nino, Nino will work just fine. It's not like attack tactic is hard to get after all. So yeah. And that's all for greens. Let's talk about Colorless. So, Bravelyn went from A+ to S-. Her weapon gives her 4 across the board. It's overall fairly solid, and her stat line works with it. Sake's Blessing also helped with her lack of defense. So, it's overall a fairly solid weapon. The only issue with Bravelyn is that she really needs merges. That's also a problem with loot, by the way, in case you're curious. To really shine, if she does not have enough merges, she typically will just not really make the weapon look good, to say the least. Overall, a decent refine. Next up is Faye. Faye went from A+ to A tier. The reason why she went down a tier is quite simple. Her weapon is very Roy-like, to say the least. It's an okay weapon when it was released, but even when it was released, she typically would end up with too much speed with the weapon, which made it very iffy. But at the same time, the weapon only gave 4 across the board against distant units, which made it not too great, honestly. I don't know why they would make a base effect giving speed and then a refine giving quick repose though. I don't understand this. It makes no sense to me. So yeah. Quick repose can typically end up being useless because you'll be comboing her into Brave Lucina, and the weapon giving 4 speed when attacked from ranged units, as well as Brave Lucina providing 3 speed from the weapon. And then you have merges, flowers up to 10, speed plus. You typically can have enough speed regardless of the situation. So it's not exactly great. Takumi went from A to B, being able to teleport around your units to basically snipe a unit used to be very good, or at least somewhat decent, and made Takumi at least okay. But the fact of the matter is, with the advent of air orders and ground orders, that's not as good anymore. It's just kind of a product of its time, to say the least. And finally, let's talk about daggers. Matthew went from S to S-, surprising no one. Mostly because Broadleaf fan is a thing. He basically has at his 15 minutes of glory, and then the very next banner gave a weapon that was doing basically is refine, but also debuffed. Actually, no, it debuffed less. Never mind. Just without the rogue effect, and the rogue effect is not really good. Honestly, I don't understand why they went for the rogue effect. I get that that was the base of weapon, but if you gave it something like cooldown -1, that would have been a niche for Matthew. But, yeah. Felicia went from A+ to A as well. The main reason why that happened is just because we're dealing with less and less unit with mixed, or not mixed, but rather lopsided defenses, making her weapon not as good as it used to be. It's just kind of a change of the meta, and she's just kind of screwed by it. As for Kagero, she went from B to A purely because of AR, because in AR, it's actually not too bad. In AR, you basically, you end up in a situation where having a unit that can just attack into whatever enemy you're dealing with, not die because of the weapon, and then because she didn't die, Wings of Mercy happens, can be very valuable. Wings of Mercy strats are extremely hard to predict, because at the end of the day, if one Wings of Mercy works in one manner and then the other ones don't, it becomes a slippery slope where you can just lose your entire team in one go. It happened way too many times where someone attacks my defense in AR, decided to try to tank with just Brave Ike, thinking they were going to be safe, and then their entire team gets wiped the next turn, just like that, so. Yeah. Kagero is actually quite good at this. Better than Seliph. Also, for the 2 people who wonder why Seliph is not higher on the tier list if I increase Kagero's rate for it. It's overall a very small niche anyway, so it's not exactly amazing. But it's something. But yeah, hopefully I didn't bore too many people to death. That was all the units. An hour and 44 minutes, and I'm ready to collapse on the bed. But, In conclusion, Cordelia is what I'd say a must refine. In fact, I'd say if you have not refined her or Camilla, refine both. You'll find that they are really good as a pair, and can actually work in mixed team as a result. Other than this,
The other three are... Rebecca has a good, very good weapon, but her stat line is just too old. Archers in general, getting any kind of refine is kind of just doomed from the start. Because the difference in BST between a Gen 1 Archer and a Gen 4 Archer is way too big. A Gen 1 Archer has 148 BST and a Gen 4 Archer has 166 to 167. Some Archers even get to 168. No matter how you look at it, that is insane. It's 20 BST basically. And 20 BST basically mean even if you get 4 across the board, you're still behind by 4 points. That's how insane it is. Rebecca's bow on Leif, for example, would be godlike. Rebecca's bow on, say, Refinement would have made Refinement at least very workable. Or on Altena, if that was an Altena, I would be plus setting her in a heartbeat because it actually opens so many things for her. The problem is that she's a bow unit, and she's a bow unit that's way too similar to the one Gen 4 Archer that demoted, making her not exactly a high priority. Henry is actually pretty good, but you really want to invest in that speed as a player phase unit to really make full use of the weapon. Because then you basically get extra stats at all time, which makes it a lot harder for enemies to basically deal with you. Another thing to note is that while I did not mention this concerning a set, running double brazen attack speed is an option. That said, while it is an option, it's really hard to use it because, well, until you're in brazen, you're basically as weak as a baby, so, you know. And Leif deserved way more than this. I've said this again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The last two battles we've got with like Tharikia and FE4 should have made me jump of joy. Instead I was anxious until we saw the stat, and when we saw the stat I was depressed. And in Abel's case, when she wasn't demoting, I was not exactly happy. And then they decide to basically make a sword unit with an actual pref, a Tempestral unit, that is just simply better than Abel. Go figure, right? Can't put this unit in the pool, then form skills too good. Nobody fathers anyone for form skills. They're horrible. Whatever. Thanks, Ias. Very cool. Here's hoping they can stop treating FE4 with contempt. If that's how they wanted to do, I just hope that they get replaced by people that actually like this franchise. I'll say just that. Still, this is an okay batch of heroes. I just wish Leif got better. But yeah, that's just me. But yeah, with that said, I think I've covered about all I've said, and I've kept you all for long enough. Have a good night, everyone. See ya.